perfect attendance on day one of training camp, and we tell you why that is important, especially for this year's Bucs. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at @Yarcho_Bucs. Make sure you're following the show at Locked On Bucs. And of course, you can check out everything that I'm doing over at SB Nation's BucsNation.com, where I serve as deputy editor. We are here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of the show. Real quick, want to apologize for missing WTSP Wednesday yesterday. Had a power outage in my neighborhood. Did not get restored until it was very late at night. So that made for a very long day. That's why there was no Wednesday episode. My apologies. Also, probably call and complain to our local power company about that. But Chris Godwin opened up about the quarterback battle following day one of training camp. And we talk about that coming up in a little bit. But first, as I mentioned, it was the first day of camp, and there were a lot of eyes on a handful of players, starting first and foremost with Shaquil Barrett. Shaq Barrett was medically cleared to participate. He was not going to start on the PUP list. And in fact, Shaq was suited up and participating in practice on Wednesday. Head coach Todd Bowles was asked about Barrett, and he said, quote, "He looked fine. He looked good. He ran around well. It was the first day. We'll see as time goes on. I think he's in good shape," end quote. This is huge. This is huge, huge, huge for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Shaq Barrett suffering that Achilles injury against the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football towards the middle of the season last year, well ahead of the projected timetable for him to return. If Shaq is 90% by time September rolls around and the NFL season is kicking off, that is a huge boost to the Buccaneers defense, especially when you have somebody like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who admitted as much that he left plays out on the field. He left sacks out on the field last year. He's looking to take a big step this season. Now having Shaq on the other side is going to open things up for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, because the attention is going to be focused on guys like Shaq Barrett, Lavonte David, Devin White, Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, who turned some heads on day one. It's going to free up opportunities for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to be able to make that big step this season on the defense, being a legitimate pass rush threat. So great news for Buccaneers fans and the Buccaneers themselves as Shaq Barrett was out there participating. But the next biggest name that we are going to talk about is another person that it's been a roller coaster of an offseason. Posted some cryptic things on Instagram, said that he was happy, then he demanded a trade. And, you know, he's been praising the Philadelphia Eagles all offseason on social media. But Devin White did suit up, did participate, was there on day one. So no holdout, no anything like that, no trying to force a trade or anything of the sort. And you kind of started to wonder how the Buccaneers were feeling about all of this. Devin White is not on the murals at Raymond James Stadium. Devin White was not in the video debuting the new creamsicle uniforms that they're going to wear this year. So he's been left out of quite a bit of promotional material, you know, with this roller coaster of an offseason. But he was there. He was on the field, and Todd Bowles again commented and said, quote, "He's good. He's in a great mindset. He's in great shape. He had a good day," end quote. The biggest takeaway for me from what Todd Bowles said is he's in a great mindset. Now, could this be coach speak and he's just not throwing his guy under the bus? Absolutely. But he didn't have to say that Devin White was in a great mindset. He could have just said, oh, he's fine. He's suited up. He's out here with the rest of us. He's in good shape. That's it. But he made an effort to talk about the mentality of Devin White setting foot on that football field, participating in day one of training camp. So that, to me, is a sign that things are going in the right direction with Devin White, with what's going on this season. Does that mean that I'm sitting here saying on July 26th that Devin White is going to sign a long-term extension and stick with the Buccaneers for the next 5 years? No, absolutely not. But it does show me that at this point in time, he understands what is being asked of him. He is fine doing his job, showing up with this contract year looming ahead of him. Is he going to test free agency? Maybe. Is he going to re-sign with the Buccaneers? Maybe. But for right now, it seems like he's locked and loaded and ready for 2023, playing for the Buccaneers this upcoming football season. Finally, one more person that a lot of people are going to have their eyes on is Ryan Jensen. Jensen somehow, some way found his way onto a football field against the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs long before anyone expected him to be able to return, if he was going to be able to return at all. And he was suited up. He was out there snapping the ball to the third string quarterback, John Molchon. And, that even Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times made a comment. He goes, just in case anyone wanted to read into who the starting center is snapping the ball to, no, it's the third stringer. Don't worry about that. But Todd Bowles again spoke about Ryan Jensen and said, quote, he moved around pretty well. We're going to keep working with him and hopefully he keeps progressing, end quote. That right there, it probably says the same thing to you that it says to me. And it's Ryan Jensen still is not 100%. Ryan Jensen is still fighting and climbing and scratching and clawing his way back from that absolutely gruesome knee injury that basically turned his entire knee into string cheese. And it's going to be a battle, especially for somebody who's been in the NFL as long as Ryan Jensen, is the aged veteran that Ryan Jensen is. I'm not going to call him old because he's still much younger than I am. But, somebody at that age in the NFL with such a physically demanding job, he's not 100% yet. And it's been almost a full calendar year since the injury. Yes, he set foot on a football field last year. No, nobody thought he was going to be able to do it, but that doesn't mean that he is fully back to being Ryan Jensen. So it's still something to monitor, still something to keep an eye on, but it's a positive sign that he was out there and participating, suited up on day one of training camp. Again, all of these things are trending in the right direction. We want to continue to see that happening for the Bucs throughout training camp. But Chris Godwin had plenty to say when he spoke with the media following practice, including his takes on the quarterbacks. That is coming up next here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are a guaranteed fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway and the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny Iyer has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Looking to make a smooth turn in fantasy football snake drafts with the last pick in the first round and the first pick in the second? Catch an initial spark for your roster by revving up two elite NFC East wide receivers, the Cowboys' CeeDee Lamb and the Eagles' A.J. Brown, a letter-perfect guaranteed early fit. Count on Lamb driving Dak Prescott and Dallas's new-look passing game to big numbers, and Brown revving up Jalen Hurts' downfield throwing often again in Philadelphia. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. and they'll make sure that it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every single day. Everydayers, come back tomorrow. David and I will be discussing more training camp takeaways from day 2 of practice that are hopefully far less eventful than day 2 of training camp practices last year. Fingers crossed. Let's put positive vibes out into the world. Chris Godwin had the chance to speak with the media following practice and had some things to say about the quarterback competition. Of course, we know it's Baker Mayfield, it's Kyle Trask. They're fighting it out in training camp for the starting quarterback position. But Godwin was asked what he saw from Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask in that first practice. And Chris said, quote, "I saw a lot of good things. They looked more confident with the offense. They were on time with their throws. Whenever there is a mistake, they are bouncing back from it. It is an exciting time, not only for us, but both of those guys. They get the chance to compete for a starting job. The environment on offense in general is very upbeat. It is not a tense environment where they feel like they are going at each other's heads. It is a friendly competition," end quote. So one of the things that you wonder when you're installing a new offense, you're working with new quarterbacks, is going back to the mini camps, going back to the OTAs. How much of that installation do these guys remember? And it's not just on the quarterbacks. It's on the offensive line. It's on the position players to make sure that everybody is on the same page. But it's the quarterback that is steering the ship, right? It's the quarterback that has to make sure that he's making the right play calls, making the right reads, and setting up his teammates for success. So that's a big takeaway. You want to see Baker and Kyle both recall a lot of what was going on with the offense in the installation earlier this offseason and how it relates to training camp, so that you're not taking a step back. You're not going back to things that were already covered. You can continue to move forward day 1. So obviously, Chris was really happy. He talked about the throws being on time. I saw some videos out there on Twitter. Baker Mayfield had a really nice pass to Ko Kieft where it was put where only Ko was going to be able to bring it down. It was a nice connection. I know Kyle hit Chris Godwin over the middle on an absolute bullet that led to a first down on one of their drills. So there are things that are looking good on both sides of the football. But Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask are different players. They bring different things to the offense. They have different skill sets, different strengths, different weaknesses. And Chris Godwin was asked about what those differences are from his perspective. And he said, quote, "That is a good question. I guess the way they carry themselves are a little different. Kyle is a little more laid back. Baker has a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder for whatever reason. That is the biggest thing so far. They both throw really good balls. They both have the ability to process information fast and get us in the right spot. So it's just their personalities. That is not to say that one is better than the other," end quote. Well, Chris, come on. I can tell you why Baker has a chip on his shoulder. This is a guy that was a Heisman Trophy winner in college. He was the number 1 pick for the Browns. They used an injury as an excuse to ship him out of town and do it late so that he was set up for failure in Carolina, where that was already a sinking ship. And then he gets shipped off to Los Angeles and doesn't get an opportunity to return there because they still have Matthew Stafford, who's coming back. So yeah, there's a chip on his shoulder to prove I am a starting caliber quarterback. I am that number 1 pick. I am that Heisman Trophy winner. I am the guy that led the Browns to their first playoff victory in over 30 years. At the same time, Kyle's a little bit more laid back because he knows exactly what he can do. He has the confidence in himself. We know that in high school and in college, he was kind of a late bloomer. Now he's had 2 years behind Tom Brady. He's able to start coming into his own, and he's not going to stress. He's not going to worry about it because that's not his personality. So I completely get where Chris is coming from. These are two very different guys. Both of them can be really good at throwing the football. Both of them can be really good at reading defenses, but one's going to be a little bit edgier than the other, and it's from his own personal experiences. Who knows? Maybe if Baker wins this competition and Kyle Trask ends up moving on after his 4th year for another opportunity to compete for a starting job, he's going to have that chip on his shoulder at that point and say, you know what? The Buccaneers drafted me. I had to sit behind Brady. Then they didn't give me a true chance to win this job. They gave it to Baker Mayfield. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to prove them that they were wrong. And he's going to have that edginess and that attitude and that chip on his shoulder. It's all about the experiences that they've had throughout their journeys leading up to this point. So I think Chris is saying all the right things. He's pointing everybody in kind of the right directions and saying, look, this is a friendly competition. These guys respect each other. They feed off of one another, but there's no animosity because the camaraderie is something that Dave Canales really preaches, as does Todd Bowles. But Dave Canales is all about the team, the individual doing things for the betterment of the team. And that's what you're seeing out of two guys that are fighting to be the person listed as the number one quarterback, the number one most important position on this football team. These guys are battling it out, but they're doing it by also helping one another, pushing one another, driving one another to be better versions of themselves. Again, it's day one of training camp, so a little of this might be jumping the gun, just a tad, but so far so good because I'm taking some of this competition stuff back to what we saw in minicamp and in OTAs as these guys have continued to go through the process, because this quarterback competition didn't begin on Wednesday for day one of training camp. This quarterback competition began back in March when Baker Mayfield agreed to a 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was the moment it started. It's just continued to evolve from there. As long as the wide receivers know that they can trust the guy that's under center to put them in positions to win, not put them in positions to fail or put them in positions to get their head knocked off by some free safety who's coming in with a full head of steam, I think all of them are going to be just fine. Rachaad White had some interesting takeaways from being the top running back on the team, as well as his new teammate, Sean Tucker. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a Thursday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And Rachaad White didn't start things off at training camp boasting about being the top back on the team. Instead, he took a little bit of a different approach. Rachaad White spoke with the media on Wednesday following practice, and he was asked about being that top player. And he said, quote, "I'm just a different person. So like RB1 or RB this, I really don't think about things like that. I just go into it with the mindset of today, just focusing on getting better. Be the guy, obviously, the team needs me to be, and I'm going to go out there and just have fun and things like that. I mean, I think our room is great. I think the guys obviously behind me are great. And, it was just a great opportunity for sure." End quote. David is not here to stop me from what I'm about to say. And while on the surface, it looks like the things that Rachaad White are saying are the right thing, the politically correct thing, the not ruffle any feathers thing, I don't like this approach from Rachaad. I'm fine with the be the guy the team needs me to be. I'm just out there to have fun, all that stuff. Okay, fine. Rachaad White, the moment Leonard Fournette was gone, was told you are the RB1. He's posted on social media about how, he's going to break out. He has been very out there and open on social media about essentially being the guy. So when I saw this, I was kind of taken aback. When you have a position like running back, and I understand, we've talked on this show about the issues with the running back wage, and you have Jim Irsay and Jonathan Taylor's agent on Twitter going back and forth about how running backs are not fairly compensated because Irsay's calling out the running backs wanting to, redo the CBA and all these things. Running back, much like corner, is not only a position of great skill and great athletic ability, it's a position of swagger. It's a position of confidence. You have to be the guy that can go out there and say, I don't care if Aaron Donald's over there. I don't care if Nick Bosa's over there. I don't care if Roquan Smith is over there. There is not a player on that defense that can touch me today. Not this, RB1, RB2. I don't think about that. No, I want to see the confidence. I want to see the swagger. I want to see him come out and own it, that this is my backfield now. We have some great guys that can come in. If I'm gassed, if I need, a play or two off, catch my breath. We have Keyshawn Vaughn who can bring this to the team. We have Chase Edmonds who has done this so far in the league. We have Sean Tucker who should have been drafted and he's going to provide this. But this is my backfield. These are my snaps. These are my carries. I'm going to be a dual threat. I'm going to be a force, and I'm going to lead this running back room, and I'm going to help Dave Canales run the offense that he wants to run, because I am a top 10 running back in this league, and I'm going to prove it to all of you this year. That's the kind of thing I want to see out of Rachaad White. He is an incredibly nice person, and I realize he's kind of doing the polite thing and the I'm still kind of the new guy. It's only my second year thing. No, I want to see the confidence. I want to see him go out there and make a statement and say, I am getting the attention of everyone because I know I'm that good. And I'm going to go out here in this offense. I'm going to support my quarterback by running the ball effectively. I'm going to support my quarterback by catching passes out of the backfield and making plays. And I'm going to support my quarterback by picking up those blitzes and making sure that his jersey stays clean. So David's going to disagree with me. That's okay. I want a more brash approach to him being the RB1 on the Buccaneers. Outside of that, he was asked about undrafted rookie running back Sean Tucker, and he said, quote, he's a hardworking dude. I was in the weight room, things like that, because I trained here, and he came in the past week and stuff like that. So it's just been good. I think he's a great addition to the room. Honestly, a great human being, down to earth, things like that. That's what our room is kind of built on. And he's very humble, things like that. So it's just been great to learn. I see he's eager to get out there and have some good plays. And, we are just all going to the drawing board and keep going, end quote. So Sean Tucker's a guy, David and I just talked about him when we did our pre-training camp depth chart prediction. And I had said that I believed that Sean Tucker was going to be the RB2 by midseason because he is that kind of back. He is incredibly hardworking. He's incredibly intelligent. And he didn't get guaranteed money as an undrafted rookie for no reason. The guy was dealing with an injury. He should have been drafted. He slipped through the cracks. And now he ends up with the Buccaneers. I hope we see some splash out of Keyshawn Vaughn. Chase Edmonds, at this stage of his career, he is what he is. I have a lot of faith that Sean Tucker is going to really kind of explode this year when given the opportunity. I'm not sitting here saying that he's going to end up taking 50% of the snaps to Rachaad's 50 or anything like that. But I do think when he gets his opportunities on the field, he is going to make other teams take notice of what he can do. So that kind of goes back to my original point with Rachaad White. Running backs are a very overworked, underappreciated, underpaid position group. So Rachaad has to take this opportunity to take the reins, take the bull by the horn, if you will, and establish himself as the guy. Because if Sean Tucker comes in and starts to go off and starts eating into those snaps that Rachaad has, now all of a sudden, Rachaad looks expendable. When his contract is up in a couple of years, Sean Tucker could take over as the top back, and the Buccaneers are just going to continuously keep looking at these day 2, day 3 running backs in the draft, or even the undrafted running backs in the draft, and just continuously move these guys in and out. Someone has to step up and establish themselves as a legitimate 3-down starting running back in this league, in this Dave Canales offense, in order to make sure that they're not the ones who are left standing in the rain with their hand out, waiting on someone to bring them in and pay them below what they're worth, like we're seeing right now with Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley. He broke a little bit, but not much. Leonard Fournette is still sitting out there. It's going to continue to happen to these guys. It's going to continue to happen to this position group, regardless of who drafts them, regardless of where they're drafted. Running backs are viewed as expendable commodities. You work them to the bone, you run them ragged for 4 or 5 years, then you kick them to the curb. So someone in this running back room has to be the one to step up and say, I'm him. I'm that dude. And everyone is going to pay attention to it, whether you like it or not. With that, I am going to bid you all a fair adieu. Again, coming up tomorrow, David and I will be talking about more coming out of Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp. It's training camp, y'all. Training camp. That means we are this much closer to real football. Until then, make sure that you are sending in your thoughts, reactions, ideas, topics, anything at all to lockedonbucspodcast@gmail.com, or drop them here in the YouTube comments and we will check those out. Check out everything that I'm doing over at bucsnation.com. Make sure you are following everything on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and of course, follow David at DHarrison82. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day, making the show part of your day, part of your routine. And if you have anything else Tampa Bay Buccaneers or not Tampa Bay Buccaneers related, of course, you know where to find us on the social medias. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.